Built by horse players for horse players, AmWager is designed for speed, power, and ease of use. AmWager brings CAW-style tools to everyday horse players, including Dutching, ABC Ticket Maker, and Pro Percent, an advanced betting tool that lets you assign weighted percentages and build multiple structured wagers with a single click. Every month, AmWager turns the odds in your favor with 0% takeout on select tracks. These promos offer you up to $100 more for your winning bets and giving you value for your wagers not offered anywhere else. Rated 4.7 stars on Google with over 200 reviews, AmWager is trusted by horse players who expect more from their wagering platform. If you're looking for better tools and better value, you need AmWager. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit amwager.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older where applicable. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE.
Welcome to the Sport of Kings podcast, episode 360, sponsored by AmWager. Go to amwager.com to see all the promotions, including the upcoming 0% takeout on the Preakness Stakes next Saturday. As always, I welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is at Derby1592. That's at Derby1592. This week, I am joined by a special guest, Ken Jordan. He finished 8th in this year's NHC, but he's also finished 2nd in the 2015 NHC. We will have a little post-Kentucky Derby discussion, followed by a detailed discussion of races 6 through 9, including the traditional Belmont Prep, the Peter Pan Stakes, all of them from Aqueduct or Baqueduct or Belmont at Aqueduct, whatever you want to call it, this Saturday. The show will focus on finding and exploiting value. We'll talk about our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hi, Ken. How's it going?
Chris, thanks for having me. Everything's going great. In between the Derby and the Preakness, still licking my wounds from the Derby.
Yeah. So tell me, how'd your Derby weekend go? Sounds like it wasn't the greatest, huh?
I entered the contest, the Twin Spires contest, and won one and bought one to get in. I would say at the start of the contest process, I always go to let me try to identify the most likely winner, the one that I want to hang my hat on for the whole contest, and see if I can bet in or out of that race. To move my bankroll to where it has to be. And this was one of these situations where everything that I do for my handicapping process pointed to crude velocity. I landed on that horse, but I blew the doubles going in and coming out. So the rest of the day was just a scramble.
Yeah. That's interesting because I will talk a little bit about mine because I had a pretty good Kentucky Derby betting challenge. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But I also was looking at, crude velocity looked like one of the more likely winners on the card. I didn't think he would be, 1 to 5 because Englishman would take a lot of money. So I figured, 4 to 5 even money somewhere in there would be where he'd go off. I wasn't going to bet him that, but I was thinking I might look because I did like the horse in the next race. I thought was even more likely to win. I thought maybe I could play that double to build my bankroll, but that double crude velocity into stark contrast was just getting hammered. I have a feeling it was all kinds of people in the contest that were betting that. It was like, it wasn't paying anything at all. It wasn't worth a bet at all. So I didn't do that. I just ended up betting the show on crude velocity to get one of my minimums in. But yeah, I agree, and he ran an awesome race. The horse has talent for sure.
He did. And the horse he beat was no slouch either.
No. They are both running. I think the horse he beat is clearly a sprinter. I wouldn't be wanting to stretch that horse out. Crude Velocity, I don't know if he's like a 1.25 mile horse, but I think around one turn and maybe up to 1.125 he's really talented. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with his bloodlines, but again, with the contests, and especially the bigger contests, the bigger, however many majors people want to identify now, you can approach it one of two ways, and I'm convinced that there's only two ways. Do you go with a scalpel in your hand or a sledgehammer? And I didn't have a strategy going in to get to 70,000 or 73,000, which I think that's what the winner had. But I thought that I could use that race again with doubles going into two-ticket strategy, practically blow out one ticket going in with doubles to Crude Velocity, and assuming he was going to win, come out with doubles. The horses I used prices because, again, you're trying to create value in these races. It's going to be a point in every contest when you have to create value. Even if the board doesn't show obvious value, you need to, for that separation, you need to get somewhat of a price into the equation.
Yeah, and he took a shot. Didn't work out, but if it had, you would have been in the position you wanted to be, and that's what it's all about. You have to come up with a plan, execute the plan, and then hope you get the result. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Right.
Yeah. And for me, I didn't get exactly the result I wanted, but I ended up doing pretty well. And my weekend really just started off pretty good on Friday because I played in the contest they had where you could win an entry into the KDBC on Saturday. So you had a starting bankroll of $500. There's only one horse I liked. I put it all on that horse, most of it to win, but I played some backup exactas. His horse name was Shoot It True. It was in a turf sprint. And I expected the big horse was She's So Spicy. I expected her to be battling on the front end. I thought Shoot It True could blow past all of them. I really liked that horse a lot. She's So Spicy just laid an egg, and the winner caught a flyer out of the gate and just wired the field kind of in a pressureless race. Shoot It True couldn't run that horse down, but ran really big anyway, and I did have that exacta. So that won me a few $1,000s on the day and a $5,000 entry into the KDBC. So that was a pretty good start to the weekend. So then I had that $3,500 bankroll in the KDBC, and there was only one horse I really liked on the Derby card. And for people who listen to the podcast won't be surprised, it was a Japanese horse, but it wasn't one of the Japanese horses in the Derby. It was a horse named T.O. Elvis that ran in the Churchill Downs sprint. It was 7 furlongs on the dirt. And I just, I had on our podcast with Craig Mulkowski, we did a Derby preview podcast, and we spent some time on the Japanese horses, and I really liked it on Bourbon, the horse in there. And I kind of talked about how I looked at the replays and also looked at the times and sectional times and did some analysis to kind of see how fast that horse was and if he fit with the Derby horses. And my conclusion was, yeah, he did. He might even be the most talented in the bunch, but there's big error bars around it. But I thought he fit. And he certainly ran well in the Derby. You could argue maybe he was the best. He ran the best race, given the way the race unfolded. But later on, I looked at the Japanese horse I was running in the undercard, and I just absolutely fell in love with that horse. I mean, I was just blown away at how good this horse looked and how good his times were, and in particular, how well he would finish his races off. And I thought, this horse might be the best dirt sprinter on the planet. Nobody can finish with this horse. If he's any kind of position turning for home and he runs his race, those American horses, and it was a pretty good American field, they don't have a chance. And but it's a big if because you got to survive the shift. He's got to adapt to U.S. racing and all that kind of stuff, right? But he's 30 to 1 on the morning line. I knew I wasn't going to get that, but I thought I could get, maybe 15 to 20 to 1 on him. And so my plan was just to kind of bet it all to win. But as I looked at the international markets on the day, it became clearer that I wasn't going to get 15 to 20 to 1. I was thinking the floor was 12 to 1, but then I was seeing that, he was about 12 to 1 in those markets, so he might even be shorter than that. So I got a little nervous. I wasn't going to get, what kind of price I was going to get on him. So I went to a plan B. I'd already planned on making a bet $250 minimum in doubles into T.O. Elvis. And I thought in that prior race, I just mentioned stark contrast, I thought he was a real standout. I had kind of sung his praise a little bit on the podcast in that I thought he was a really, really good 3-year-old turf horse. And they were smart to run on the turf. I did think Remember Mamba was a horse that maybe had a little bit, maybe was one possible threat if stark contrast didn't run or had a bad trip. So I was already going to make a double into T.O. Elvis for 250, but I just decided I'm going to go all in on those doubles, most of it on stark contrast, but a little bit of it on Remember Mamba. And I had to save $250 to bet in the T.O. Elvis race, or I wouldn't hit my minimum. So I had to save that. My plan there was to just bet it on him into doubles in the next race. And doubles were paying really well. That's why
that might have been the pool of the day. That double.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. It was paying, $40. So I was getting like 15 to 20 to 1. What I kind of thought I might, that I didn't, based on the win data I was getting, I wasn't going to get. So I thought, I'm getting the value I want. So I'll play it all on the doubles. And
Chris, where did that late win money originate from? Did they ever identify that?
Of course, we're never going to know. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we'll never know. That's the problem with racing. It's, there's no transparency. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I have two theories, and I'll talk about that in a second. But first, let's just so I made that bet, and then of course I'm completely focused on T.O. Elvis. I'm not really paying attention to anything else because I figure if he breaks alertly and gets a decent mid-pack position in the clear, he's going to win. And he breaks alertly, he gets a decent mid-pack position. He looks very comfortable hitting the turn, without being asked. He starts picking the horses up. And if you watch his races, this horse, he just has another gear when they turn for home. And they turn for home, and he hit the nitro switch, and the horse just blew the field away. And it was, as they crossed the wire, I talk about like the horse player high. I had it, I had a major hit of that horse player high. And because this is one of those horses where you had to dig a little to get to it, and you're right, and you score. That's what we crave as horse players. And so that was great. But I hadn't really paid attention to anything else. And then I look at the screen, I noticed that, he when they closed the gates, he was 12 to 1. And when the race was over, he was 5 to 1. And that I could not believe that. Given the size of the pools, that was just incredible. Now, I was thinking to myself, I don't care. I'm locked in. I've got these doubles, I've got a 40,000 plus score. So it didn't really bother me that much. In fact, I was kind of gloating a little bit, not really, but inside, man, what a score. I got the double and he went down to 5 to 1. But then I said, oh, wait a minute. What about my other doubles? I had a $200 double to Rhetorical in the next race that was paying like $16,000 when the gates closed, and I had another backup to the other horse I thought had a chance. The only horse I thought was a threat, which was Make Me King, the Dubai horse. And there was the smallest one was the Rhetorical one, even though I bet a lot more on him. It was 16,000 when they closed the gate. So I went, okay, wait a minute, what happened? Because if they pounded him on the win, they probably pounded him everywhere. And that double was paying $80 when they closed the gates. It ended up paying $26 in the wheel pay, 26 in the wheel pays. So I went from making 16,000 to making like a little over 5,000, 5 or 6,000. That was like a $10,000 hit from that late money that came in after
they give with one hand and they take away with the other.
Yes. So I went from, the ultimate old horse player's high to like now what racing has become the only game where you can, win and feel unhappy about it. Because now I'm like, if I like cash now, it's going to cost me 10 grand because of that lace hit. Now the horse Rhetorical won, and it was nice because Rhetorical never looked like a loser either. It was just the same thing. It was like it was one of the unusual things where you have like 3 races that all go exactly like you thought they would, and so I hit it, and so now I'm but instead of being like at 55 or 56,000, I'm at 46,000. But I'm still sitting in second place, exactly where I wanted to be. And if I'm right about the Derby, I have a good chance to win. And if I don't have to bet that much to be able to win, and I could still maybe hold on to some kind of prize money, even if I don't hit the Derby. So it was all ideal. But the big thing was that late price drop, and how crazy that was, and how it just shows how broken our system is right now. And you were asking me, well, what do I think happened there? Well, to me, there's probably 3 explanations. One is that some Japanese syndicate or Japanese players just made a score, right? They bet millions of dollars, probably $1 million on this horse. Just 300,000 in the win pool, and exactas and doubles. I know they did the same thing they did in the win pool. So it's probably
are the Japanese pools commingled?
No, they don't have a commingled pool. But I mean, could have been somebody, some syndicate put together a bunch of money, and I'm guessing it was probably from Japan. That's just one. I'm not saying that's happened. That could be so. Just one major player. It could have been one of the big 2 elite teams. Absolutely thought this horse was way mispriced, and they bet it. But I don't think that's true, because I don't think on their fair odds line they would have made the horse 5-1. I don't, because that wasn't reflected. That if you looked at the international odds, you could maybe say they might have thought they were 10 or 12-1, but I don't think anybody was playing except for me thought he would have been good value at 5-1. I thought he was even money to win the race. I was really high. I was so high on him that when I started looking at his replays and looking at the data, Craig, who had just recorded the show on the Derby horses, I sent him a text and I said, Craig, I'm the horse I'm most excited about betting on from Japan on Saturday is not even in the Derby. And then he said, well, tell me more. So I called and talked to him, and I just raved about this horse. I mean, I just thought he was a beast. So anyhow, I don't think it was that one team, but sometimes it can be a couple teams. Both are seeing the same thing. They both hammer it, and combined they overshoot, at the fair value. And I think that is probably the most likely explanation, that there were a couple teams that thought this horse was badly mispriced by the public. There's big pools. We can make a big score. And their computers are saying we need, this horse we should be betting a bunch of money on it. And they both did it. And because of that, they don't get they get the last look at all of us, but each other, they can end up colliding with one another. And I think that might have been what happened. That's purely speculation on my part.
That's the state of the game today, and it will take a lot longer than an hour or whatever to have that figured out. But it's just, I know we'll probably both have more to say about that. It's just disappointing that for every bet that's made, the parties of the bet, the racetrack, the ADW, if they happen to be taking a bet, the player, and the people that get the purses from the betting. It's disappointing because the equation has got this missing link of the horse players. Horse players are the ones being made to sacrifice. Yeah. And that plays out time and time again. For any business agreement, people have to walk away reasonably happy from it. But if it's, hey, you horse players sit down here, we'll fit you for the noose, and don't you say a thing about what's going to go on to you. Again, it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
they've been predicting, the worst possible results forever. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to be.
All right,
fixed.
well, table that because I'm going to bring that up again in a little bit. But anyway, bottom line is
I have it in my notes. Don't worry.
All right, I didn't hit the Derby, but I ended up with finishing third. One person, I was sitting second going to the Derby. One person they went all in at over $3,000 to bet to win on the winner, but he's the only one that hit the winner, and he vaulted past the two of us that were first and second. So I ended up in third, and all together, I came back with over $80,000. So I was very happy, and it was pretty much on, just two opinions, one on Friday and one on Saturday. So I mean, that's the beauty of these contests is if you can come up with an opinion that can separate yourself from the crowd, and you can play it with conviction, you can really get rewarded, not just at the windows, but with the prize money. And plus, the tournaments are so much fun. It's like the one thing that's gotten better for horse players in the last 30 years is the tournament scene. It didn't exist before. It does now. And it is actually one place where, obviously the CAWs have an impact on the prices when you're playing in the tournament. So I'm not saying they don't have a role, but you're not directly competing with them on an unlevel playing field like you are in the pari-mutuel window. So, I really encourage people who haven't given tournaments a try to do it. And there's so many different opportunities, so many different kinds of contests. So there's something out there that you probably like. And I spend on my new book. I always got to bring my book in and make a plug. Betting on Horses. That's just come out, and you can go to betwiththebestmedia.com to order the book if you're interested. I dedicate a section of the book to tournaments. Lots of great wisdom from top tournament players. Guys who've won the BCBC and the NHC and all the big contests and their strategy and how they go about it. And I also talk about, how you can figure out what your style is as a horse player, and then based on that, what sort of contests are the ones that would probably be the contest that you would be able to be most successful at. So if you like contests and you're playing them already, I really encourage you to get the book because I think it can improve your results. And if you haven't ever given contests a try, I really encourage you to do that. And again, if you want to get a head start on how to do better and compete in those contests, the book can help you out there. But so it was good. It was a good weekend. I had a lot of fun. What do you think of the Derby? Bottom line, there. Any thoughts just of the Derby itself, or what you're thinking going forward with any of the horses that ran that day?
Well, we haven't heard this year's a great crop yet. I don't know that we're going to hear that from this bunch. I guess I tried to get a little too cute. I thought Baffert was flying under the radar. Potente. So the running of the race, to me, other than the start, it seemed clean. The race wasn't the meltdown that some commentators tried to portray it to be. It was, 46 seconds, 46 and 2 to the half, and he just came and got him.
Yeah, but I will say this. It wasn't, the fractions weren't the typical Derby pace meltdown, I think is what you're saying. Usually that's 45 and change. This was kind of like a normal Derby pace, which is fast for a regular race. But for the Derby, it was about what you expect. And usually at that pace, the front runners have an advantage just because they get to stay out of trouble. And that was the way I kind of analyzed the race going in. But the race did melt down. It was the classic, if you take a picture of, like the drone shot of the field at the half mile pole, and then you look at it in the mirror, that's how they flip. Basically, everything flips. The horses in the back end up at the front, the horse at the front end up at the back. You had that classic, I call mirror image finish. That's results in, it was a pace meltdown. But I think what it is there are two things I think led to it. And this is one of the things I'm going to spend a little more time thinking about and factor in next year. One is, and it's nothing new. Horses just, they don't have any foundation. They don't have any experience. They're just so babied and lightly raced. They're just not ready to go a stressful mile and a quarter. And I think you're seeing that in that we're getting more of these pace meltdowns when the pace isn't nearly as hot as it used to be. In the past, the front runners would have held up a little better under that pace. Now they don't, just because they don't have the foundation. They don't have the experience. And in this year in particular, and the other thing is, riders and trainers they're really afraid. They baby their horses even in the races. They're afraid to let them, set a fast pace or press a fast pace. They even baby them during the race. And we saw that. And one of the things Craig Milkowski said in the Derby preview pod was there was only one prep for the Derby that had red-coated fractions or a hot pace, and that was the Wood Memorial. And he said that's really, really unusual. So all these horses, not only have they been babied in terms of their training and their, number of races they've been in, but they've been all these small fields with slow paces. They basically had never been in a testing environment before. So it's really not that surprising that when they actually run a legitimate pace and they have to go a mile and a quarter, they don't have the foundation and they don't have the experience and they haven't ever gone this fast early before, that they're all gassed when they turn for home. And I think that's what
18 horses and a mile and a quarter are two factors that they may never encounter again.
And the ones who dropped completely out of it, and the top three were completely out of the race. There was a huge gap between everybody else and them. That is exactly the trip that you want to have when the pace melts down the Derby. And again, Craig and I talked about this. Ideally, you're a horse that gets an outside post that just drops right back to the back of the pack, because they avoid all the stress, all the traffic, all the kickback, and they can leisurely move over towards the rail, save ground that first turn, and then if the rider's smart, they don't move too soon. They don't try to get cute and weave through traffic or, cut the corner. They get them in the clear and they just let them run down a bunch of gassed horses. And that's how you win or hit the board in that kind of a race. And that's exactly what Ocelli and Golden Tempo did. And now, and Craig and I both thought Golden Tempo was exactly the kind of horse that would take advantage of that. Because I didn't think the pace was going to melt down. I didn't think he could win, but I certainly thought he would hit the board. And we really liked Full Effort, who scratched. But if Ocelli had been in the field and we had talked about him, we probably would have said the same thing about him. We also said you don't want me down the inside because that's where you get banged around. And even if you're a closer, it's not ideal. There's just more stress down there, a lot more pressure. And we saw that with Renegade. I don't think the trip was as bad as most people think, because he ended up where he should have been. And he got to drop back out of all that stress initially, but he's definitely had, a little more stressful opening quarter than the other two.
The drone shot was so valuable because you saw, especially for the winner, every time he needed a break or a split, he got it going through. I mean, it's easy to identify that from a drone.
Yeah.
But the top two really had pretty clean trips after the start.
Well, even at the start, I've certainly the Golden Tempo even had a clean start, and it was predictable. The horse just dropped right back to the back and stayed out of trouble. All three of them had good trips. Now, relative to everybody else. Now, relative to each other, you could argue maybe Renegade. Renegade probably had that some of the problems early cost him a little, maybe enough to win given the margin of defeat. And Ocelli, you could say, got probably the worst ride of the three because his rider didn't really make an effort to save ground early, and he was a little too impatient and aggressive. He made that first move. It was very eye-catching, but it probably cost him some at the very end. So, I think all three of them ran well. All three of them had good trips. But, Golden Temple had the best trip and the best ride, and he won the race. But going forward, I'm not sure what you take from that. If this race was run with exactly the same trips, he's clearly going to win. But I don't know if he's ever going to get that kind of setup and that kind of trip again. I think he's a pretty good horse. Like I said, I thought he was a little underrated. I thought he might have been the best horse in the Louisiana Derby. That's what we talked about on the show. But anyway, there's always trips in the Derby, right? And whenever you get one of these pace meltdowns, it's really hard to figure out what to take away from it. Is it another Rich Strike or Mage who, they're probably not going to do much down the road, or is Golden Tempo a little better than those? Maybe.
Yeah, I give Golden Tempo a little more credit than a Rich Strike type, which I had that race as a total collapse. He once he set him down, he showed he's a real racehorse.
Yeah, he did. He had the best trip, but he had to finish it off, and he did. All right, so one last thing before we get into the races. Probably the listeners are got us on 3.3x speed right now when they're listening to this. I like to talk about the betting menu. I'm gonna do something a little bit different because this is NYRA. And NYRA is now fundamentally different from every other racing jurisdiction for one big reason. They're the only major track actually doing something meaningful to manage the CAWs. We already talked about how the negative impact they're having on players. Well, now NYRA limits CAW activity in all their pools, not just the win pool, not just a pick 5. They're limiting the activity in all the pools. The CAW teams cannot batch a flood of wagers right at the last click. They have to get all their wagers in at least a minute to post, and I think all pools, 2 minutes in the win pool. I might not have that exactly right, but no other track is doing anything remotely close to this. Most are doing little or nothing to manage the CAW access to their pools. So instead of simply complaining about CAWs, players now have something they've never had before, a choice. So let me use a poker analogy. Imagine you walk into a large poker room with tables spread out everywhere, and at every table except one, sit the best poker players in the world. You can choose to sit at any one of those tables, but there's a catch. You also have to play by a different set of rules than they do. One rule is you always have to bet first. They all get to see your bet before making their own decisions. The second rule is that when they win, the house only takes a tiny rake from the pot. But when you win, the house takes a much larger rake. Now imagine there's one special table in a separate room called the NYRA room. At that table are 5 regular players just like you, and everyone plays under exactly the same rules. Now, which table would you choose? The NYRA table, of course, right? You'd have to either be stubborn or foolish or both to choose one of the other tables, because at least in the NYRA room, you have a fighting chance. At the other tables, you really don't. Well, for the first time, horse players now have a similar choice every time they log into their AW account. You can choose to play at the NYRA table, where the playing field is at least somewhat level and where you actually have a chance to compete, or you can continue to play at tracks that effectively give retail players the finger every single day by allowing CAW teams virtually unrestricted access to the pools. And make no mistake, NYRA's taking a risk by doing this. Their handle is down because CAW participation is down. Meanwhile, most other tracks continue catering to CAW teams, and they just assume the rest of us will keep betting no matter how unfair the environment becomes. So now all of us have a very important choice to make. If enough players make the right choice, and shift some or most or all of their handle to Naira, we can collectively send a powerful message. Naira will be rewarded for creating a fairer wagering environment, and the other tracks may finally feel pressure to follow suit. But if players continue supporting tracks that refuse to manage CAW activity, despite all the complaints and outrage, then nothing's going to change. The game will continue moving forward to a future where computers are primarily betting against other computers and retail players slowly disappear. I think this summer and fall may prove to be a pivotal moment for the future of horse racing. We now have a real choice, and how we respond may determine what happens next. Think of it as our meteor heading to the Earth moment. We can be stubborn and refuse to adapt until we become extinct like the dinosaurs, or we can evolve, change our behavior, and give ourselves a chance, not just to survive, but maybe even thrive. It's up to all of us. Please choose wisely. The future of the game may depend on it. Okay, my rant's over. Sorry about that, Ken, that you had to be here to listen to all that. But I really feel strongly.
Chris, in this day and age with CAWs running roughshod, I never thought I'd say it, but you're spitting the truth.
Well, thank you. I just hope not only that some of the players out there agree with me, but they're willing to change their behavior and do something besides complain. Because if we don't do that, nothing's going to change.
There'll never be a shortage of complaints from horse players. And then they'll probably go right back to what they were doing. That was to what got them pissed in the first place. So
right. I'll just encourage the people that are, disrespecting them and but continue to complain about it anyway.
Well,
all right.
Racetracks have never even attempted to hide, I'm going to say, contempt for the intelligence or contempt for the horse player.
They certainly haven't treated us like their valued core customer. Let's just leave it at that.
We'll go with there. Skillful players can still win this game with a level playing field and knowledge and skill. You can turn it into a positive expectation game. And that's what gambling should be about.
Yeah, it's still the best skill-based gambling game ever devised. No matter what the industry does, they can't kill it but they're certainly trying. But in my book, again, I'll give Bet with the Best another plug, betwiththebestmedia.com, if you're interested in the book. I have a large section about computer models and computer teams and talk about what you can do to better compete in the current environment. But I think right now, if you seriously want this game to continue and you want to have a chance as a horse player in the pari-mutuel pools, you have to change your behavior this year, because if Naira ends up losing 10 or 15% of their handle because of what they've done, and retail players don't fill that gap by responding to the opportunity to actually play on a field that gives them a chance to win, they keep playing and where they're playing now and where the tracks don't do anything, we're stuck. We're going to continue to head in the same direction we have been in recent years. But I want to stop there because people probably want to hear what we have to say about these races coming up. So let's get started at Naira. And this gives you an opportunity to go bet your money on the Naira tracks. Let's support Naira. Let's show them retail players appreciate what they're doing, and that we're willing to start betting more on their product because of it. And it starts with the 6th race. It's a grade 3 Nerud stakes going 6 furlongs for older horses. In fact, I think these are actually, older horses. It's a small field, but pretty competitive. The 7-5 favorite is 1-900, who got beat at 2-5 last time. What do you think of that favorite? You gonna try to beat that one again? If so, how? If you like that one, how are you going to leverage that?
Well,
What do you think?
Chris, I'm just seeing the morning lines for the first time now. He got beat at 2-5. I think he was more a victim of a way overconfident ride in that last race. I think the freshening since the end of February, a couple of nice workouts, one exceptional workout since then. I still think he's the best of this bunch, and the cure for an overconfident ride last is on today. Flavien Prat should be able to get him to the front, and that's my pick. Nothing creative there.
Yeah, that's definitely a anytime Pratt gets on board, that gives the horse a better chance. So that's definitely a favorable rider switch. Of course, you usually pay a Flavien tax as well. How would you bet this race if you're going to lean on the 9 and he is going to be a short price? Or would you bet this race?
So individually, as a race, not part of a longer sequence, what's this? This is the start of pick 6. So yeah, pretty safe to say I wouldn't bet it. I'm against Radio Red turning back. I probably would pass this race. I don't see anything other than the order that the board's going to be. I see the 5 as a favorite. The 2 is the second favorite. The 3rd is the third choice. I've got no insight into this race other than the favorite looks legitimate.
Yeah, the thing I will offer, I don't disagree with much of anything you said, is I actually like Radio Red some. I think that horse is the best closer in the race. I don't mind the cutback. Seems like all the rest of them want to be forward, and Radio Red might be able to sit off of them and finish. You could argue maybe the horse's best race was going 6 furlongs at Aqueduct in February of last year, I guess it was. So, oh wait, is that right? No, earlier. Anyway, it was February last year. Yeah, and at 7 furlongs probably February this year. So I think the distance might be perfect. The race mate set up for it, and I have a feeling it could even float up above 5-1. I have a feeling that the 5 and the 2 will take a lot of money in here, especially the 5. So a little bit different opinion. Not one I'm dying to play, but at 5-1 or higher, I think Radio Red would be a worthy win bet. So that's kind of the only thing I would offer.
Yeah, along those lines, if you're looking to try to squeeze a little bit of a price of 4, the Wanavila horse, occasionally he'll have a horse in New York run to some of the numbers from Florida and Jersey. Not all the time, though. He's really hasn't broken through in New York, but it could just be a 2-speed number around the track with those two, the 5 and 4.
Yeah, that he did bring that horse to Aqueduct. I guess it was last year, and in this race, right? Yeah, the same race, and ran second at 12-1. Led from the start, got nailed at the wire.
Maybe that was the occasion I was thinking of.
Yeah, and the problem is, I just seemed like a lot of the horse. There's a lot of pace in here, so that I don't know if he can do that in this race. But I kind of like the angle of, you might get. I think that horse could certainly float up above 6-1. Put it that way, and not impossible. All right, let's move. So let's move. Anything else before move on to the next race? No,
it's a race. I'd say the less said, the better.
All right, so let's go to the 7th race. This is the Ruffian, a grade 2, going a mile. So older fillies and mares, a grade 2. So there's some serious black type for these horses. The 3 Eunomia will be, or Eunomia, I'm not sure how you say that. 6-5 the morning line, probably going to be a strong favorite. Is there another favorite you're going to lean on, or you're looking somewhere else in this race?
I don't know that all three Saffies will go. He's got a scratch later on in the card. Again, not much insight here. Irish Maxima will be hard pressed to get the mile. It comes off to two good races in a row. The last two races. Not in love with the Chad. And the other horses, to me, too slow. Dry Powder really hasn't improved as a 4-year-old. Still trying to run back to that cotillion effort. Again, for hoping to have a winner and maybe get the 4 in the exact, I would go 3-4.
So again, you're going to lean on the favorite, and if they keep 4 in the race, which of the 3 Saffies, that's the one I think is most likely to scratch. But if they do keep it in, you're thinking you could even go Saffi Exacta. Sounds like. Yeah.
Again, this is not a race that I would be anxious to bet.
Yeah, one thing that's a little under the radar, I'll bring up because Saffi has the favorite in here. He's been smoking hot in these big stakes races shipping out of Florida, which hasn't always been his MO. I mean, White Barrio ran a monster race. Prior to that, what was the name of that horse at Oaklawn? I can't think of the name of the filly, but he had a filly win their big race for the fillies and mares, older horses, just run off the screen, a huge effort.
In this year?
Yeah.
Claret Beret.
Claret Beret, yeah, because I should know that because I made a good score on that race. And then this weekend, Our Disaster went wire, beat Ways and Means and Splendora. Those were 3 all huge efforts off of and big races shipping. So that's something maybe to watch. Saffi seems to be on fire right now, at least in the big races when he's, when you really want to have the horse. And they're not just winning, they're running monster races, right?
They are. And, it wasn't too many years ago, after a particular Derby weekend, they were trying to run him out of the business.
Right. So, I mean, whatever he's, and I used to kind of fade his horses outside of Florida, but
yes,
boy, I would not do that right now. Let me just say that. He's shown he can get him to run. I mean, the Claret Beret was just a jaw dropper. That was a monster race. And White Barrio, we know what he can do, and he did. He ran his best race. But when he runs his best, it's really good. But Our Disaster, it looked like the race set up for her, but Ways and Means is a really nice horse, and so is Splendora, and she, went wire to wire and ran a good number in that. So anyway, keep that in mind. Saffi's hot. The only thing I'll offer different in here is, you dismissed Dry Powder. I kind of like that horse. I thought its race 2 race back was pretty much in line with the cotillion. I thought that was a really nice effort. It didn't beat much, but I thought it showed second off the layoff she was back. And I liked her in the Grade 1 La Troyenne, which was certainly a tougher race than this. She did not do anything. She was hung wide on the first turn, really wide. So I don't think she was going to win anyway, but she didn't really lift a hoof. So it's interesting to me. That was, last weekend. They're going to ship her to New York, wheel her back. To me, that tells me that they think she didn't do any running and there's a reason why, and that it's not going to happen again. So I kind of like that. And I think she'll get completely dismissed off of that race. I think she'll be a lot higher than 5-1. I'm kind of interested in that race. Now she may end up just scratching, right? I don't know. They may have entered her and decide not to run her because she just ran on Friday in the Grade 1. So kind of strange spot, but that's why I'm so interested in her, is because of the spotting. So
yeah,
anyway,
for years growing up watching the game, for years a quick comeback was a plus. It was a positive sign. When people talk about horses can't run 2 races in 14 days or 21 days. Well, 2 races in 7 days is fine if the horse didn't expend too much energy in the first one.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a funny little factoid. I have a book right here. See if I can find it. It's called The Complete Horse Player by Tom Ainsley. It was sort of like Ainsley was like the buyer of his time, right? He was the first kind of intellectual approach to horse racing and looking at things like, pace and stuff. And he has some guidelines for betting. And one of his big guidelines, and this was a long time ago, was, cost a horse that hasn't raced in the last 2 weeks.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? There were mechanical systems back then, 2 weeks, 21 days, 28 days, that the horse would be thrown on his ass with no second thought.
Yeah, the game has changed. And that's why as horse players, you have to adapt too. You can't have these firm, hard rules because nothing lasts forever. No rule is going to hold, and times change. And the way the trainers approach races and training is completely different than it used to be. So you got to adapt. All right. Yeah. Anything else on this race?
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Irish Maxima can get the trip as a 5-year-old. I don't think the horse can take them all the way. The last race was an extremely soft flow in her favor, but they'll have to run her down. And I'm not really concerned about the Chad horse.
Yeah, I think the Chad horse is the one that's going to get overbet, right? It certainly has upside, but it has to improve quite a bit to win. So I'm always going to bet against, a horse that has to improve a lot to win, and it's a favorite. Now, if it has to improve to win and it has upside and it's a big price, then I get interested. But yeah, for me, horse could win, but I'm not going to bet on it. Irish Maxima, though, I agree that horse, this is kind of a little bit outside her comfort zone, but she's run like the last race was easy, but the race before that at Aqueduct, she set a solid pace. She cleared early, which really helps from getting her to relax. But Nick Style is a quick horse, and she opened up on that horse and had to go fast to do that. So that horse has talent, but like I said, it seems like all these want to be forward. It does seem like a stretch for her to go the distance. But if they dismiss her, I could get a little interested if she were to float up above 5-1. But I think 5-1 is about what you'll get on her. I think Dry Powder could go off at much higher, assuming she doesn't scratch. That's why I'm interested. I think she might get completely dismissed off that last race.
Right. By the same measure, the Safi 4 dazzling move, the last race is too bad to be believed.
Yeah, it was just, and given, especially given, like what I just said about how his horses are running. But in some ways, I'm a little bit negative because his horses have been running and this one didn't lift a hoof. But the fact he's got her entered is probably encouraging. Although like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see her scratched unless, Safi is thinking, well, I want to have this horse in just to go with the speed horses, kind of be a rabbit. Maybe that's the purpose for entering that horse. But I don't share your enthusiasm with the chances for that one.
Okay.
Not that doesn't mean can't win, but to me, it's either a rabbit or it's going to get scratched. I don't think it's in it to win it in this race.
I see your point, and again, if enough people think that, I'll get a price.
Yeah, you'll get a price, right? It's exactly. I mean, it's all about the price, right? There's no black and white. Every horse is playable at a price, at the right price, and no horse is playable at any price. That's
when Safi stays with them, even when they're going bad. It seems like when they turn around, they get good. Skippy Longstocking, perfect example. He went bad for a while. So
yeah, but I don't think he ever ran a race like that last one for Dazzling. So yeah, but we'll see. So I mean, I wouldn't blame you for taking a shot on that exacta, but I would want a really big price. I would much prefer playing like Dry Powder, who I think just had the one bad race, and the fact they wheeled her back would say that they think they have an excuse. Maybe she threw a shoe or grabbed something that or she had a tooth that was bothering her or something, and I don't know, something that kept her from running well that you can fix right away. But we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next race, the 8th race. This is Take the A Train Stakes, going 6 furlongs for 3-year-old fillies. So it's restricted. It's our only turf race. There is weather in the forecast. So it doesn't look terrible. It looks like it stops raining, not too much. But it's just a stakes race, but it could come off. But let's assume it stays on. In this race, Cadenza is a 2-1 favorite. It seems pretty wide open to me. This is one of those turf sprints where I think you can make a legitimate case for any of them. Do you agree, or are you going to lean on one of the favorites, or the 2-horse Cadenza at 2-1? I guess that really is the favorite in here. The Brad Cox horse.
Again, I'm just seeing the morning line now, and I'm encouraged that the horse I like is a 2, Pillar of Beauty.
Yeah, 6-1. So what do you like about that one?
Nice win at Gulfstream to start, and then ran against some good horses, including Slay the Day, who turned around and made Sci-Fair run Derby weekend and won the Limestone Stakes at Keeneland. I have this horse just behind Slay the Day. From a pace standpoint, Pillar of Beauty should improve this race. This is a morning line favorite I'm against, that Brad Cox horse.
All right, and there's the horse you do like, the Pillar of Beauty, 6-1. One of many in that kind of odds range, so you'll probably get that price.
And by the way, the second choice that I would have in the race is the 5, Alpenglow.
8-1. So what do you like about Alpenglow?
It's the old standby racing flow upgrade off of the last win. The turf race chased a soft pace to a 48-2 half mile. Never got in contention after that, after the bad break. Back onto the synthetic, wire win, improved the figure. I think the horse is well meant today.
Yeah, of the two, I like Alpenglow the better. And you mentioned Racing Flow, so I want to give them a plug. I just love how you can incorporate that data into your Timeform US or DRF formulator PPs. It integrates it right in there on the running line, so you can see, like you mentioned, Alpenglow on the February 21st race. That was actually a 2-turn race, a crazy slow pace that it was trying to close into. The closer favorability rating was a 3 on a scale of a 1 to 100, so it was like a no chance for closers. The flow rating was -195, which is really favoring front runners. So that race you can probably toss. So it looks like its only turf race was bad, and maybe it's a synth horse, but I don't think you can conclude that based on that one performance. So I kind of like what you're thinking. Plus, maybe it's a 1-turn horse too. So and you're getting a better price. So I kind of like Alpenglow. I'm with you on that one. Anything else in this race?
When your first choice is 6-1 and your second choice is 8-1, you don't need to look much farther.
So how would you bet that? How would you bet it? Now you have 2 price horses you like in here. How would you bet it? Either in the race, or are you looking to hook it up in doubles or any kind of picks?
Well, so since that's part of the late pick 5, I would probably use either both A's or an AB. And I probably, again, it depends on what the board says at the time. I would tend to not bet them both to win if the price is right, but I would probably box in the exacta and split the exacta with a trifecta bet.
So would you bet one of them to win, just the one that has the best price? Is that how you play it?
Price dependent. If they both stay in that price range, I would probably bet the two.
Yeah, and I'd say a couple. In general, in this kind of situation, you can use them both in the picks. You might want to lean on one harder than the other, as opposed but either way, boxing the exacta makes perfect sense. And I think you're right. You don't want to play them both to win. Now, if they were both 20-1, maybe you could consider that. But typically, if you're getting less than 10-1, you don't want to be betting more than one horse to win. I'm not saying never, but
I agree.
But
and again, I prefer the 2 over the 5. But if the 5 is 12-1 and the 2 is 4-1, then I'm betting the longer one.
Yeah. So I think that's good. So this is sort of a wide open race. I think there's other interesting horses, so I want to mention a few in here. In addition, although I do really like Alpenglow, for all the reasons you mentioned. Another horse I like in here is Just Filtered, the 7 horse. This horse is coming in off a layoff, which nowadays doesn't really mean a whole lot. Does have a nice gate work since coming back. I like that when they put a gate work into a horse that's coming off a layoff. That usually means they mean business right off the bat. It's not a prep. And when he ran, he was very sharp early on as a 2-year-old, and ran really well in its first turf race, and didn't run too bad at all in its second, going 6 furlongs, in a graded stakes. After that, really hasn't run a bad race in its life. And based on his 2-year-old form, if she comes back and runs to her 2-year-old races or improves off those, she certainly fits in here. And 5-1, I think about the right price. I probably need the horse to float up a bit to want to play that horse. But for me, that one is interesting. Also have to kind of like the 8 horse Sweet Montreal, because she's she's a 3-year-old coming in second off the layoff, ran a pretty good race off the bench, set the pace, got a little tired late. I talk about this all the time, this golden pattern where second off the layoff, you may see that career best effort. It is a 3-year-old filly, so fillies don't develop necessarily as much from 2 to 3, but there is still upside. And she seems like she's going to be sitting on a big race. And that outside post, I always like, if its field's not too big, just because she, with a good ride, they can get positioned. And she has the kind of speed that can put her forward, but she doesn't have to be on the lead. So I kind of like her some as well. And I could talk about some of the others, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and again, my thoughts on these are, I'm strictly thinking it's on the turf. If it's not on the turf, I imagine the 3, King Solver, would be the selection.
That's a good point. Maybe I ought to talk a little bit. So you're thinking the 3, King Solver, if it's not on the turf. Let me see what I would think. I probably would stay with the horse I talked about as the one I like the most, Just Filtered, because that horse has run fine. Although it didn't run well, it's probably its worst race, though, was the one time it ran on a muddy track. So maybe not so much. If it's off the turf but not muddy, that would probably be the horse I like. If it's muddy, it's a little tougher, right? Because none of these horses really can't really tell how they're going to run.
Right. So again, I just had the 3 seem to run against some of the top 3-year-old filly dirt sprinters last time, and I don't think any of the rest of the field is going to be much on the dirt sprinting.
Except for the 7. 7 certainly, has several wins sprinting on the dirt. So I think that's probably
yeah.
That horse I think is probably the one to beat. If as long as it's not muddy. Like I said, the muddy race was the one time probably didn't run as well as you'd expect. But anyway, let's hope it stays on the turf. And let's go to the last stakes race of the day, the one people are the most interested in, the 9th race, Grade 3 Peter Pan, has been a prep for the Belmont for a long time. It's 9 furlongs, which is kind of that separator distance for 3-year-olds on the dirt. And small field. There's 2 horses vying for favoritism. One's a Chad horse with the upside, the 3-horse Growth Equity, 6-5 on the morning line. The other is the 5-horse Talk to Me Jimmy, who's 9-5 on the morning line. Interesting thing about Talk to Me Jimmy is he was one of the horses that helped create the only red fraction Derby prep, the Wood, which was a race that completely fell apart. And he was part of the reason why it fell apart. But in this race, he's probably not going to see quite the same, get quite the same competition up front. So what are you thinking? You like either of those 2 or somebody else in here?
So we got back to a pick based on a Racing Flow upgrade. Talk to Me Jimmy is an upgrade off of, the 7 furlongs he ran in the last race. It was an extreme flow, favored for closers, and also the bias of the track favored closers that day. I don't know much about Modernist. Rudy surprisingly has won a few stakes in New York. I think his brother might scratch the 6. And I understand that Bull by the Horns is scratched, the Safi horse.
Yeah, I heard Bull by the Horns was going to be pointed to some other race too. So I don't know that for a fact, but that I do remember hearing something like that.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything
I
on
would
the
just
6
say
horse. What makes you think?
I don't
you heard something?
Well, I think the 6 was in to make the race go, and I don't think. If you look at the 6's style since he claimed him, I think he's got to be towards the front. I don't think he would compromise his brother's horse.
Yeah, especially with Kendrick riding, that would probably be horse would be put on the lead for sure.
Yeah, and again, I don't know anything inside about that, but generally, they make races go for each other.
All right, so you're thinking. So I'm reading between the lines because you haven't really said it, but you're thinking Talk to Me Jimmy is the horse in here then?
Yes, and again, sorry for anybody who had to listen for 2 hours to get to a 9-5, probably 4-5 favorite in the stake race. But again, this is Aqueduct. This isn't Damascus or Buck Passer or Secretariat as a 3-year-old. This is Talk to Me Jimmy in 2026.
Yeah, and but I think Growth Equity, Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt coming off an impressive maiden win will take money too. So I don't know if Talk to Me Jimmy will be 4-5. He'll probably be at least even money or higher. So
okay,
what would you? Is this a race you'd bet him to win?
No.
So
this would probably be he'd probably be the sole A, no B in the pick 5, and we might get wide on a couple of other legs.
Yeah. What about doubles back to the horses you liked? The 2 horses you liked in the prior race. Would you play that?
Again, that's a possibility. I find if I like a horse and he's the only horse I'm willing to hang my hat on for the day. I try to run the whole pick five through him. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong.
So is this the one you think is the most likely winner of the sequence?
Yes.
So you're going to have a heavy lean on him in any bet you make.
On the pick five, yeah.
Or any bet you make that goes through this race.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So anything else? Well, I just want to make one comment. There is one other horse. I think that Growth Equity and Talk to Me Jimmy are two contenders. There is one other one that I think you have to give consideration to, and that's the one Trendsetter who comes out of that win in Lexington. He's not a bad horse. He is one that will benefit if they go a little fast early. Because he's probably the best closer in the race. But if they scratch Golfy, like you said, that will probably compromise his chances some. Although there is some other speed in the race, including the 2-horse. So, maybe it still could set up for the one Trendsetter. I don't really like that horse as a win bet, but I do think even at 3-1, he probably offers a little value. And if he were to float up above that, there's a little value in the one. So that's the only thing I would add to that race.
It's more of an anti-Lexington race for me. As that race didn't do much for me. The 2 Azam is a half to magnitude. May get better as he goes along, and 1 1/8 won't hurt him. So he might be able to spice up the ticket.
Yeah, or spice up the early pace too. So that could be, that maybe Talk to Me Jimmy has to go really fast again early. We'll see. Doesn't look like it. But so it sounds like for you, if Talk to Me Jimmy gets the job done, you will probably cash something in this sequence.
I'm glad it sounds that way to you, because I could still find a way to not cash.
All right. So that's probably all we're going to cover. Did you have anything else on this Belmont card? Any other spot play maybe that you wanted to mention? There are a couple more races after this on the turf. I think they're a little dicey on whether they're going to stay on the turf.
That's the thing. Everything's a game time call.
Yeah, if I was confident we were going to see those on, I would probably be offering opinions, but I haven't spent a lot of time on that yet because I hate wasting time on a big field and then the race comes off the turf, so.
Right. So that'll be part of a contest. I'll be at the Monmouth contest. That's their opening day. And Belmont at Aqueduct is one of the tracks included in the contest, and we're hoping that Monmouth can get through some troubling times and have a big meet.
So in a contest, you like Talk to Me Jimmy. What's the format and how would you play him in a contest?
He's it's towards the end of the day, but it's not the last race, so he's really kind of useless in the Monmouth format, which is win, play, show.
Okay, you can't you couldn't play him in doubles or exacts or anything like. You have to play win, play, show. But if he was like the last race, then you could play him right and
yeah, depending on what you needed.
Right.
Realistically, unless you were among the top on the scoreboard, you couldn't use him anyway because he wouldn't provide enough for you to get there. If you were
near the top and you wanted to, and you could use your bankroll and play him and win the contest if he wins, right?
Yes, you could use it. So it's not the format that's for another pod, but he'll have limited value in that contest.
All right. So I did get one question. It was about how do you adjust for off tracks when you have like the stakes races like we talked about what adjustments, if any, do you make anticipating there might be an off track, because of the weather?
Well, re-handicap the race, see, look for proven off-track form. That's obvious. See if turf horses just stay in just for the exercise. Over the years, I've had some interesting results when races come off the turf and people continue to bet it like it's still on the turf. That's a gift. That's a gift that we don't always cite, but occasionally it happens.
Yeah, that's a good one. A lot of times horses on those off the turf races without any proven dirt form get overbet. Doesn't mean they can't win, but there's a lot of uncertainty that doesn't probably get priced in the way it should. The other thing I would add is when there's weather, that's a better chance for changing track conditions that could introduce biases. So that's one where I'd really pay attention to. Does it look like there's a bias? And one of the things I'd look for is kickback. Does it seem like there's a lot of kickback? And the way you can kind of tell that, two things. One is, are horses that are in behind other horses shying away, turning their head, kind of climbing? That's usually a sign that they're not liking that kickback, and that usually favors front runners when you have that condition. The other one is, when the race is over, look at the horses when they come back and see if the ones near the front are clean and the ones near the back are just coated in slop, and the jockeys are just coated in slop, and they went through 5 pairs of goggles. That again probably favors front runners. And then you might actually just see, just based on the results of the races, are the front runners in, having an advantage. All you got to be really careful about that kind of analysis.
Well, you can get into the weeds with it. When did they seal the track? Did they seal the track? Was it sealed overnight? Because eventually that seal breaks and tracks can turn.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes other thing is the rail bias or anti-bias. So, some tracks, they really drain towards the inside, and it could be bad to be inside. Some of them, the rail's got a lot less dirt after it's washed out, and it favors them. So I just pay more attention to biases when the weather's changing, the amount of moisture in the track is changing, that kind of thing. That's my advice. And kickback can be a big thing if it is a sealed track or sloppy track. It can be a lot more brutal than it would normally be. And that's something worth looking. And that usually favors front runners when you have those conditions. So that's the one thing I would offer.
Right.
All right. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I feel limited by the short fields in this sequence of races. If it was another week, I could have given a lot more high-priced losers.
Well, you have to play the hand you're dealt, and you don't have to bet every race, right? Maybe none of these races will be playable, at least in the win pools, or any of the single race bets. It's okay. That's that kind of self-discipline. That's one of the things in my book, Betting on Horses, we talk about is you don't have to bet every race. And race selection, maybe you see this and you decide, what, I'm not even going to waste time on this card. It's the dirt races have small fields. Turf races might come off. Maybe I live to fight another day or look for, someone racing somewhere else. And I talk about, race selection and all that sort of stuff in the book, Betting on Horses. So, betwiththebestmedia.com if you're interested in that. And again, I really encourage everybody out there. If you're complaining about the CAWs, you actually have a choice now, and the choice you make is going to have repercussions that could be really important. If you choose not to support NYRA and what they're trying to do with the CAWs, we may never see things get better. But if you do, and at least shift some of your handle towards NYRA, we have a chance maybe to see things get a little better. In fact, I would challenge you. I think that poker analogy I gave is legit. and that your chances of success playing at NYRA are just better, significantly better than any other track right now, with the exception of a few pools at a few tracks where they also manage the CAWs a bit. So, if you want to get better and have better results, you will do better at NYRA. And I would challenge you, divide your bankroll in half and spend half of it there and half of it where you normally play. And at the end of this year, see where you did better. And I'll be shocked if you didn't do better at NYRA.
It's easy to get frustrated in this game. There's a 1,000 ways to lose a race, and then you find another way. But when people say, I'm doing this on Polymarket, on Kalshi, I can do that, 1% of the people are capturing 70% of the gains doing that. So not everybody's winning over there. Like I said, if you can, through your knowledge and skill and your experience, if you can make it into a positive expectation game, you'll be playing for a long time. And that's what it is. Sometimes some of the advice that's given, sometimes some of the strategy that people advance, I wonder how suited it is for long-term play. If you just want to try to bet horses as a recreational player, have a great time, let the math work in your favor, it's the greatest game in the world. Some might make a living on it. I got a feeling it's an under as far as how many are claiming to. I'm sure some people do. But again, can't stress it enough. It's the greatest game.
Yeah, but I mean, your chances of winning are a lot better if you're sitting at a table where you're playing by the same rules as everybody else, and you're playing with guys that have the same resources and knowledge that you do. So game selection is big, pool selection is big. And if you're going to choose to play at the tracks that don't manage CAWs at all, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you're going to play into the pools where the CAWs excel the most, and that's the more complicated pools with the smallest bet increments, and we're talking about the jackpot 10-cent wagers and pick fives and stuff, they're just, the CAW is going to crush you unless you're just really, really exceptional in bet construction and that side of the game. But
right.
if you decide to play at a track that was trying to manage CAWs in the kind of pools where you don't have to, compete with the CAW teams, especially the more simple pools like the Win, Exacta, Double, then the barrier, the hurdle you have to overcome to be successful is much lower. It's like on one, you're on that little, the 100-meter hurdle thing, where you just got to run up there and jump over it. It's not easy, and the really good people make it look easy, but you can do it. But the other one, you need a pole vault to get over to the hurdle and be successful. And which one do you want to play in? It's your choice. But don't complain if you decide to play where you're being abused and you have a choice. I get it if you have no choice. Then maybe all you can do is complain or walk away. But now you have a choice. So stop complaining and do something.
Knowledge, with this information, you got to say to somebody, who are you going to blame now if you lose?
Right. So stop complaining and start making some changes that will improve your chances of winning. And by doing that, all of us will benefit, because that will send a strong message to the people who make decisions. Now, they don't always respond the right way, but at least will reinforce NYRA for trying. I'm not saying they've solved the problem, but they're the only ones that are trying. And they have reduced that hurdle is smaller there. And if you don't take advantage of that, it's on you. And
Chris, frankly, I'm surprised that they're not banging the garbage cans, getting attention for it. I really think they need to get it out into the general public and not just the social media followers.
Well, all I can do is try to bang the drum, and the people who they can ignore me, which usually they do. But I really feel strongly that this is an important time for the game, for players. The first time we have a choice, and we got to make the right decision. If we don't, we deserve exactly what we'll get. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap it up.
That's true.
Thank you again, Ken, for joining. And to all the
Thanks for
listeners
having me, Chris.
Oh, thank you. And for all the listeners who put up with my rant, that'll conclude show number 360 of the Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend, and please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Cheers. That's a wrap.